Hey folks, Kilt-Man here, Kilt-Man! And friends, at your services. How are you all? Hope you're doing very, very well. Now, lest you guys think I'm getting a bit too vampire besotted, worry not, my true allegiances lie with my lycanthropic pack, of course. But at the moment, just indulge me. I did a video just previously on this amazing book, Bram Stoker's Dracula, starring Bela Lugosi from Legendary Comics. And this is a great adaptation of Bram Stoker's original story, his prose, his characters, his dialogue, but albeit given Bela Lugosi's likeness on the count. Awesome. Now, of course, that stoked a lot of people to get in touch with me and say, well, you know, who's the best Dracula? What's the best Dracula movie? Come on, if you're such a big expert on all this, let us know. Don't keep it to yourself. And this was mainly instigated by a good friend of mine, the learned, the scholarly David Huckvale, author, lecturer, composer, musician, frequent contributor to Blu-rays and DVDs with the supplementary bonus material, an expert in many fields, and he particularly asked me, come on then, what's the best Dracula? What's the best adaptation? And he then gave me his ideas. So I thought, okay, all right, we're going to run with this. And David, loving your work, mate. David has written extensively about Hammer movies, and in particular James Bernard's awesome music for many Hammer movies. You've just heard the main title from 1958, Dracula. In America, Horror of Dracula. So, right, how do we do this then? How many awards are there? You know, you've got the Oscars, you've got the Tonys, you've got the Brits, you've got the Razzies. So what are we going to call ours? If we're going to have a little bit of an award ceremony, what are we going to call ours? Well, I think we're going to call them the Lars, as in Draculas. So we're going to run through a few candidates. Of course, this is all subjective, which is all part of the fun of these things, isn't it? So what are you going to do? The best Dracula, the one that's the most faithful to what Stoker wrote, the best adaptation and the most faithful adaptation of the entire story. And then maybe for a bit of fun, let's have maybe the best, just the best performance, just our favourite, or rather my favourite, Dracula. And it doesn't have to be accurate, it's just, you just really enjoy that interpretation. And as I said in the previous video, pretty much everybody who comes to this role has to give something different. They're all inevitably compared against Bela Lugosi and Christopher Lee. You just are. It's just the way things are. These are the two grand masters of playing that role. And obviously what Stoker wrote, which incidentally, Hammer's Christopher Lee interpretation of Dracula is not what Stoker wrote. And Bela Lugosi's interpretation for Todd Browning and Universal is not what Stoker wrote either. So, you know, you can pretty much discount those two from those interpretations already. But I took the liberty of compiling a little list. And this is just scratching the surface of the people who played Dracula. Now, we're talking proper Dracula, but I have included Nosferatu because Nosferatu is the Dracula story, just rather illegally done at the time. And, well, we all know the story of that, but Nosferatu, Werner Herzog's version in the 70s with Klaus Kinski is extraordinarily good, but the original, Max Schreck for F.W. Murnau, it's a symphony of terror. That is up there with everybody in the top 10 of the most ghastly horror movies ever made, because it just is so bloody creepy. So here's a rundown of who we've got here. These are people who've played Dracula. Not any other vampire, but Dracula. And as I said, Nosferatu, we're going to count him, even though it's Count Graf Orlok, it is Dracula. So Max Schreck, obviously. Bela Lugosi. John Carradine. And we had Lon Chaney Jr. played son of Dracula. Count Alucard. But you know, it's all in the blood. So, yeah, and that's not a bad movie actually, to be honest, but he's not in the running. Christopher Lee, of course. Paul Naschy. Yes, that pint-sized and yet wrestler, physiqued guy that played the Voldemar Daninsky, the famous werewolf, but he also played Dracula as well. Dracula's greatest love, or Dracula's great love, wasn't it? No. Louis Jourdan in the awesome BBC 1977 miniseries, which is just, well, we're going to come on to that a fair bit more. Louis Jourdan, who was French and in his 60s when he played the Count for that version, was tremendous. Frank Langella, a couple of years later, for John Badham in the 1979 version of Dracula, which again is more like a parlour room, uneasy, mystery, quirky, eccentric take on the horror story, but it is fantastic, and Frank Langella does give a great performance, a great vivid, romantic, swooning, brooding portrayal. Not quite horrific though, so again, you're missing the mark there, Frank. Udo Kier for Andy Warhol in Blood for Dracula, or Andy Warhol's Dracula. No. John Big Dick Holmes in what's it? Dracula Sucks, which was the hardcore porn version of Dracula. John Holmes. No. George Hamilton IV from Love at First Bite, which again I think was that 1979 as well, I think, which was a rather genteel and kind of, it misses the comedy beats far too more often than it actually hits them, but it's got some great little comedy moments in it. George Hamilton looks the part, doing the pure Bela Lugosi impersonation, and you've got the wolves howling, cue the wolves, oh, oh, and it sounds like an owl, doesn't it? And George Hamilton's Dracula goes, "Children of the night, shut up!" Brilliant. And then in New York, he's a bat flying around in the ghettos, but of course they don't think of him as a bat. And he goes, "I'm not even a bat. I'm a black chicken." They're trying to catch him to eat him. But other than that, the film it's kind of dry. Leslie Nielsen, Dracula, Dead and Loving It. You gotta love Leslie Nielsen, and that's great, but it's pure parody, spoof, pastiche. Gary Oldman, hearing his music there from Wallachek Killer, and yeah, that's a great performance, and it adheres to much of Bram Stoker's Dracula, hence the title. But Bram Stoker did not write his Dracula, his Count, as a brooding, sycophantic, romantic anti-hero who finds the reincarnation of a lost love and reawakens his black, darkened heart. And that's not the character. Yes, a lot of the dialogue is there. Yes, a lot of the incidents are there. Yes, all the characters are there. But that is not Bram Stoker's Dracula. The character itself is so far removed. Yeah, he is old when Jonathan Harker first encounters him, and he does. The man had grown young. Yes, he grows young when he comes to England, and obviously the more blood that he manages to imbibe, then the healthier he gets, the more youthful he gets. But it's still not right. Gerard Butler. For Sparta! For Dracula! For Transylvania! No. Jonathan Rhys-Meyers. Luke Evans, Dracula, the Untold Story. Got to admire some of these films over trying something different. You know, look, how many times are you going to try to tell this story? As we'll discover, there's only a couple that actually do adhere to what Stoker wrote. Only a couple out of a list of hundreds of Dracula movies. So, no, Luke Evans, I'm afraid. Again, romantic, heroic sort of figure. Again, a fallen angel, but nah. Richard Roxburgh in Van Helsing with, oh God, what's his name? Big guy, Wolverine. Oh, you know, Hugh Jackman, that's it. What's that? 80s new romantic, gothic look. But he's having fun doing it. There's a lot of zeal to what he does. Dracula, though, it ain't. His plan, his world domination plan. Actually, you can't knock that. Christopher Lee went down that road as well for Hammer with satanic rites of Dracula. You know? Claes Bang for Mark Gatiss, Stephen Moffat. The lamentable travesty that was the more recent BBC Dracula TV adaptation in 3 parts. Please, if you ever do find you're at a loose end, do go back and watch my 3 epic videos for each episode. And I enjoyed the first 2, and then they completely destroyed everything with that ridiculous, absolute, abysmal atrocity of episode 3. Claes Bang, no, you're not in the running at all. Who we got next? Willem Dafoe, who plays the actor Max Schreck in the great version of Shadow of a Vampire, which is telling the story of F.W. Murnau making the film Nosferatu. But the great conceit, of course, is that Max Schreck, the actor, is actually in this story a real life vampire. That's how he looks. And he is beginning to put the bite on various cast and crew members as well. Can't control himself. And it's John Malkovich as well as F.W. Murnau. Eddie Izzard's in there. It is great. No one ever seems to talk about that movie these days, but it actually is a really good vampire movie. And a nice slant on Nosferatu. But Dracula? No. Sorry. Thomas Kretschmann for Dario Argento's Dracula 3D. Oh my God. What the hell happened there? We all knew that Dario Argento had really shot his bolt several years before with all his epic Three Mothers movies, and Deep Red and his Gialli, but then he began to lose the plot big time. I know what, I'll just bring my daughter in and get her to strip off and get raped all over again. What is that about? How many movies are you going to put that into? And Rutger Hauer as Van Helsing. Oh dear God. Dracula turns into a big praying mantis with lamentable CG. It was an absolute mess. An apocryphal mess. So no. Carlos Villieres. Now, this was the guy that played Dracula in the concurrent version that they made right alongside Todd Browning's 1931 Dracula, but for the Spanish market, Spanish-speaking market. And as most of you know what I'm going to say now, it is highly regarded as being the technically superior of the 2 productions. They filmed Todd Browning, shown a day, night time. They go to the sets and they, use all the cast. Well, they use the crew and all the equipment from Todd Browning's and film throughout the night, the Spanish version. But Carlos Villieres playing Dracula, and everyone says it's technically superior. It's a longer version. A lot more happens in it. It's a lot more adventurous with its camera work. It's nowhere near as static and as staid and as dry and as theatrical and stage-bound as Todd Browning's. But it has not got Bela Lugosi in the central performance. Carlos Villieres does well, but his face, he smiles, and he looks like Nick Cage going crazy, going full on Nicolas Cage. It's just manic staring, and it cannot help but completely unravel and deflate any mood and atmosphere that's being set up. And yet the film itself is a wonder to behold. So no, Carlos, no. Jack Palance for the Dan Curtis TV version. Jack Palance does a good job. That's not a bad film. It's not Dracula, but it's a good adaptation. It's a good rejigged sort of revisionist look at Dracula. He's played as a more volatile, ex-warlord who still wants his glory. It's a good telling, but it's not an accurate one. So I'm afraid, Jack, you're out the running. John Forbes Robinson, who was in The Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires. And by the way, there's a lot more on that coming very soon. Aye. He's not in it much. He instigates an exotic curse, and you get the Oriental vampires then. But Dracula, no, not. So, Max Schreck, Bela Lugosi, Christopher Lee, Libby Jordan, Frank Langella, Gary Oldman. And I did put a tick by Jack Palance because I do like his performance, but it's not accurate enough. Max Schreck. So what we're going for now, this is who's the best Dracula? Alright, who's the best Dracula? Cheers, y'all. Yeah. That's not whiskey. I'm all out of whiskey. I'm on the poor man stuff. Ugh. Well, okay. No, in fact, tell you what we're going to do. We're going to do the best adaptation. That might make things a little bit easier. The best adaptation, and I haven't even mentioned it yet, is by Christopher. The best adaptation is a Christopher Lee adaptation, I think. Excuse me while I go and answer the knock at the door. Just 1 second, folks. Folks, yeah, there's something great in there which you're going to see later on. Timing, as they say, is everything. Anyway, so where was I now? Jess Franco, yes, of the tremendous zooms and languid photography and really, soft porn and really laborious gore. A Euro sleaze king did a version of Dracula in 1970 called Count Dracula, starring Christopher Lee. Christopher Lee played Dracula 10 times, only 7 times for Hammer, but perhaps his greatest performance as Dracula would be for Jess Franco, because Jess Franco's version was faithful, was very accurate. A few characters get amalgamated and a few incidents are missed out, and it has a bit of a laborious, dry, slow midsection, but it does tell the story, and it has got Dracula with dialogue, which what Christopher Lee always wanted to do, which Hammer never gave him the opportunity because their dialogue they wrote for him was so bad that Christopher Lee just wouldn't do it. I know he annoyed a lot of the Hammer stalwarts. Sea Bloody Lee they called him because he was just so arrogant. But he's perfect for the role in that this time they show the Count as old, white and grey haired, mustachioed at the start, but as the film goes on and he journeys out and imbibes more blood, more of a youthful vigour overcomes him, and he does look younger and becomes more of a force to be reckoned with. But he has got the dialogue, and the film does depict, it's the first depiction of Dracula going down the castle wall. Ta-da! Plus, in a great moment as well, you get, the brides, Dracula, who are going to feed on Jonathan Harker in several different versions, of course. And Dracula produces an infant, a babe, a squawking babe for them to feast on. Oh dear God. In the book and in this version, you do have a woman, the mother, coming to the castle gates to bang on the doors and say, you fiend, you monster, give me back my baby, give me back my child. And then as Jonathan Harker watches from an upper window, which he can't get away from, she's devoured by wolves outside. And that's in this version as well. So you've got two tremendously accurate and vivid adaptations which really adhere to what Stoker wrote. Jess Franco's 1971 Count Dracula with Christopher Lee, looking and sounding and acting the part more so than he ever did for Hammer, which is why Christopher Lee wanted to do it. And you get Louis Jourdan in the lavish BBC adaptation, the 3-part one, Count Dracula. In fact, I'm playing the music to it now from Kenyon Emrys Roberts. Cymbalom and all that, it's very exotic and quirky. Now this is very talky. It's a tremendously well acted and nicely gothic rendition. It follows the story perfectly. Again, like with Jess Franco, there's a couple of characters that have been amalgamated, but it's a shortcut. But the simple fact is, it follows the dialogue and the story and the portrayal of Dracula as Stoker wrote him better than any other Hammer version or Gary Oldman version or any other version apart from the Jess Franco one. So you've got two tremendously good adaptations. Louis Jourdan, however, is too damn good looking, too suave, too sophisticated. He has the backstory, he has the history, he has the verbiage. He's able to hold a discourse with people, because Dracula wasn't just a fiend. In Stoker's words, he is repellent. He's a pestilence, for God's sake. But he has got refinement, eccentricity, and antiquary. He is an age-old character who has lived many times and seen many things. So, and all that comes across in Louis Jourdan's performance and in Christopher Lee's performance for Jess Franco. For Hammer, Christopher Lee is just literally, apart from the first movie, where only in the first half does he actually speak, and then it's just action. It's great. Some Draculas sizzle, some Draculas just suck. Christopher Lee sizzles as Dracula, as the Hammer version of Dracula. He's arrogant, he's aristocratic, he's a noble bastard, a noble fiend. He epitomises what Hammer always strove to do in their movies, to stick that finger up at aristocracy, at the upper classes. They hated them. The upper classes had things to hide. They persecuted the minions. All their films are about this. They're about the upper classes being unveiled as being the monsters. So in Dracula, they had the perfect poster boy. That's exactly what he is. He's an aristocratic nobleman, but he's an absolute fiend and a monster at the same time. So he's perfect. But Hammer didn't really elaborate on it. Don't get me wrong, folks. I love two of the Hammer Dracula movies. Dracula and Dracula Prince of Darkness. But the rest, they may have elements which are enjoyable, but they're not good films. The Hammer Dracula series is a lord of very, very diminishing returns, whereas the Hammer Frankenstein series, with a couple of exceptions, always added something different, something new, and did play about with the format, and were always interesting to watch. Whereas Dracula was just a walk-on in his own movies. Christopher Lee would just stand there and swirl a cape and go, "Oh, with his red blazing eyes." And that'd be it. There wouldn't be a whole deal more that he could do, because he wouldn't speak the lines. For Jess Franco, he did. So Jess Franco's version, accurate to Stoker, and a pretty good depiction of Dracula. He is refined, he is eccentric, he is an aristocrat, but he is also, you don't like him, you're afraid of him, he is fiendish, he is horrible. Stoker. Louis Jourdan, he's just too nice. So what's edging this one for the best adaptation is adaptation. That's the whole thing, folks. The whole thing. Is it Jess Franco? Is it BBC? What do you think? Yeah. What about you? A difference of opinion. Folks, the best adaptation, the most accurate, the most faithful is the BBC's Louis Jourdan 1977 version of Count Dracula. That gets the award. That gets the La for best adaptation of Dracula, most faithful adaptation of Dracula. Best performance, best Dracula that we see on screen. Taking everything into account, into consideration. And there's so many great performances, as I say, and I do like Gary Oldman's performance, but it's so far removed from what Dracula is. It's a pantomime, it's a theatrical experience, which is wonderful to behold, and it is a truly great portrayal, but it's not accurate at all. It isn't. It's an exaggeration, a great, huge embellishment of what Stoker wrote. So, Gary Oldman is not the one. I love Bela Lugosi, I do, and Bela Lugosi has the refinement, he has the sophistication, the age, the quality of having lived many lives, and a backstory which he's only barely hinting at. He's got that, but he's still not what Stoker wrote. Louis Jourdan, best adaptation, but not the best portrayal, not the most accurate. I'm going to go with Christopher Lee, again, for Jess Franco. So there you go. He looks the part, he acts the part, he speaks the part, he is the part in that movie. You may watch that film and go like, oh God, this is boring. Well, because it is. Jess Franco shoots in such a languid way. It does have some gothic excess, which is lovely. You know, some of the shots are great, some of the sets are great, but the low budget does come through. The low budget for the BBC Count Dracula with Louis Jourdan comes through as well. You've got some very rubbery bats on strings. You've got some lamentable, although there's a charm to them, some very, very poor, even for the time they came out, video effects, where it enhances, a bit like a sort of a very primitive version of the Predator vision, where it goes all video, grainy, warped out, glitzy, pixelated video, and it enhances his eyes and his skin and his teeth, and you've got billowy, washed out clouds of blue and grey. It's of its time, but it seemed dated even then, that effect, and it does detract from it. But otherwise, the Beebs version, having filmed extensively in Highgate Cemetery and Whitby, of course, Whitby Abbey and the cliffs, filmed there, a lot of it is filmed there. And you have almost the full first episode is set in the Transylvanian castle of Count Dracula. So you've got all that. That's always the best. Always the best elements of a Dracula story are Harker or whoever going to Castle Dracula, and the mystery, the suspense, the dread, the creepiness, the gradual unearthing of what's really going on there. That's where it all comes together. The rest, as Stoker writes it, it's a very episodic adventure. You know, it's a romance in the old style of romance, as in you're globe-trotting, you have multiple characters, you have lots of action and cliffhangers and chases and suspense, rather than the big swooning, brooding, broken-hearted, tragic, fallen angel style romance. This is a great version of the Dracula theme, James Bernard's Dracula theme, Rhapsody for Lucy. It's just incredibly good. So, folks, that was my little tiny award ceremony for the Lars. take from that what you will, but please leave some of the happiness that you bring. There's many more Draculas out there. I know, but none of them hold a candle to the guys I've just mentioned. Just to run down it again, just to remind you all, Max Schreck is awesome as Nosferatu. Bela Lugosi is awesome. John Carradine, top hat, very gaunt. Nah. Christopher Lee, awesome. He's awesome just to look at. Anyway, Paul Naschy, you're just too squat, mate. Louis Jourdan, fabulous. Frank Langella, fabulous. But again, Frank Langella, he's too heroic, he's too good looking. It's not the right character. Udo Kier, John Holmes, George Hamilton IV, Leslie Nielsen, Gary Oldman, great performance. Gerard Butler, oh dear. Jonathan Rhys-Meyers, oh dear. Luke Evans, forget it. Richard Roxburgh, forget it. Claes Bang, just forget it. Don't ever come back. Willem Dafoe, exquisite. Doesn't even need makeup. He's a gargoyle to begin with, isn't he? Thomas Kretschmann, get out of town. Carlos Villegas, nice try. Everything around you looked great. It was just you, mate, just you, and that's just because you couldn't help but grin all the time. Best adaptation, the BBC's 1977 Count Dracula, Louis Jourdan. The best performance as an accurate Dracula, Christopher Lee in Jess Franco's 1970 Count Dracula. Folks, I have been, and always shall be, more a fan of werewolves than vampires. Oops. Present company accepted, of course. I will be back very shortly with something very extraordinary to show you in that box that just turned up. A box of experimental earth from Transylvania. Folks, gonna see you all at the Borgo Pass. Laters.